Are you sick of belly fat that won't move, loss of muscle tone and strength? Are you worried about memory loss and dementia? If you're a woman aged 35 to 65 plus, this video is for you. Let's start with the bad news, and that is that as we enter perimenopause and menopause, our estrogen levels drop. Now, if you're younger, why did I say this video was for you? Because if you're a younger woman who's suffered from irregular periods or you have PCOS, then you already have been suffering from low estrogen. Estrogen is very protective. It's anti-inflammatory, so it's protecting you against all the degenerative diseases. Plus, it builds muscle, it builds bone, it protects your brain, and it prevents the buildup of belly fat, also known as visceral fat. And the difference between the fat you don't like, that you can kind of pinch, that's called subcutaneous fat. That's below the skin, and that's more aesthetic. But the visceral fat is the kind that's dangerous, and that's what's creating that really tough to get rid of belly fat. And so it's fat around your viscera, which means your organs, and that's why it's dangerous. So estrogen is highly protective, but what happens if you are somebody suffering from irregular periods or PCOS or just the passage of time, perimenopause and menopause? There's a term called geroprotective. You can think of geriatric, but basically it means how to age well. And the geroprotective organs, we just have two, and it's muscle and ovaries. So we have two until we go through perimenopause, menopause, and then the ovaries bow out. So we're left with muscle. And that's really what I want to talk to you about today, because as women, this has been a forgotten area. When research is being done, believe it or not, less than 1% of all research done is done on women over the age of 40. So we're pretty much forgotten as soon as we leave our fertile years. And so it's very important that we focus on what we can do to age well. It's not just about longevity. It's about health span, right? We want to live long, but we want to live healthy and productive. And unfortunately, 2/3 of all inhabitants of nursing homes are women, and it has a lot to do with frailty. We lose the bone density, we lose the muscle strength, we fracture a hip, we fall, we fracture a hip, and what happens is that 30% of women within that first year will lose their lives, and 50% of the people, mostly women, who have a hip fracture, they never return to their former activity level. So they have a cane, they have a wheelchair, they're very reliant upon family, and we don't want that. We want to turn the ship around. And I honestly don't care how old you are as you're listening to this. What I'm about to tell you, there's no too old to make this happen. So let's jump in. When women are in menopause, they typically reach out for help because they have brain fog, they have night sweats, and that's fine. But there's more insidious changes occurring in perimenopause and menopause, and you can't really feel your bones crumbling. You can't feel the brain degeneration that's happening or early changes in your heart. And it's not noticeable at first how you're losing muscle strength, but these are the things that are so important to jump upon early. Let's talk about high intensity exercise. Now, this is something that we only have to do 20% of the time. So there's an 80-20 rule of exercise that's probably pretty different than what you've been doing. So if you look at 20% of the time, that's 2 days a week. So that's pretty easy. And what high intensity exercise means is that you are at 80% or more of your max heart rate. So very easy way to figure out your max heart rate. You take 220 minus your age, and that's your max heart rate. So you will need some sort of metric that shows you your heart rate, whether it's an Apple Watch or a Whoop band or an Oura Ring, something that will show that to you. Sometimes machines at the gym have that, but you want to get a feel. Now, one way to do it without a machine is that when you are at that degree of heart rate, that high level, you really can't talk. You just you could get out a word, but you're not, you're absolutely not speaking in full sentences. You can barely talk. You're just all you're concentrating on is getting a breath in and out. So that's the degree of strain that high intensity is. And if there's high intensity training that can do this, heavy weightlifting. Now, when we say heavy, first of all, you have to make sure your form is correct. You don't just jump into heavy weightlifting if you've never done it. So you need some training, but the intensity is 3 to 5 repetitions. So you're lifting a heavy enough weight that you can only do it 3 to 5 times before what's called failure, which is like, I can't do another one. So that is very different than the little biceps with 5 pounds where you do 30 of them, or 15 of them, whatever. This is a 3 to 5 before failure. So it's a very different level. There are 8 really critical benefits of this high intensity exercise I'm talking about, and I want to go through all of them with you. The first one, that you're going to like, is it prevents visceral fat and belly fat storage. So it turns that around. It sends fuel to your muscles and your mitochondria. And the mitochondria are the little energy producers inside every cell. And when you think about it, when you eat, what do you want to do with that fuel? You want to burn it. You don't want to store it like a bear going into hibernation. That's the belly fat, right? That's what we're trying to get rid of. You want to shunt it right where it needs to be, to the energy hungry parts of your body. So muscle and mitochondria. So the high intensity exercise is going to do that, not just to the muscle you're using while you're working out, but also to your mitochondria in every single cell. And remember, it's only 80-20 rule. You're only doing this 20% of the time. You wouldn't want to do it every day. You need to recover. So you actually get stronger. One other thing that happens as estrogen goes down is the ability of what's called your contractile fibers, so how tightly they can hold on and contract to give you a strong muscle contraction so that you can build muscle. Those get weaker with lower estrogen. Women tend to have less of them than men, less strength to a degree anyway, but we really lose it when the estrogen goes down. But it doesn't matter, because if you do the high intensity exercise then and the strength training, you literally get these back. I mentioned that estrogen was anti-inflammatory. So is this high intensity exercise. So it is anti-inflammatory, not only allowing better muscle strength, but it prevents the diseases that come along with inflammation. So from fatty liver, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, osteoporosis, dementia, all of these can be countered by this activity, despite the fact that you might have low estrogen. High intensity exercise increases what's called neuroplasticity of your brain. It just means that your brain can regenerate and develop. It's not stagnant. It's not on a decline. You can actually produce more neurons, more brain nerve cells by this type of activity. You might have remembered in high school, if you got a burn after, you ran really hard and then you got a spasm, and your coach might have, your gym teacher might have said, oh, it's lactate buildup in your muscle. So we always thought that this thing called lactate was just a byproduct of using your muscle. It turns out it's not only important for muscle, it's important for brain development and neuroplasticity, meaning growing that brain and continuing to keep it fresh and regenerating. And so we women, again, have less lactate fibers than men, and we tend to lose them readily in menopause. But we're not stuck that way. The high intensity exercise gets those lactate fibers firing again so that you get the benefit of more muscle strength and, again, neuroplasticity of the brain. So the memory loss, the moving toward dementia is considered preventive, which is really exciting. High intensity exercise benefits your sleep. Sleep is pretty much everything. And so many experts say, prioritize sleep, prioritize sleep. It's the most important thing. And it is in so many ways. It's when your body regenerates. It's when you clean out toxins. And so what happens as estrogen diminishes is that sleep quality tends to suffer as well. This can be counteracted by our high intensity exercise that we're discussing. So it's a great thing to add for sleep quality, which helps repair and helps you across the board preventing disease. Also, what this type of exercise does is it balances your nervous system. So you get into a parasympathetic response, which is your rest, digest, and relax. So you feel very relaxed. It's a mood stabilizer. And you might have heard that about exercise. It's used for treating depression. And there's many studies to support. I should mention that I'm going to have a ton of studies in the references of the description of this video, because there's so much robust research supporting what I'm saying. So those are the 8 reasons to adopt high intensity exercise. So what do you do the rest of the time? 20% you're doing high intensity. So 80% of the time I want you to do low intensity. So now you're at 50 to 70% of your max heart rate. Now, something I do with my husband every morning is we take a walk, about a 2-mile walk. And it's a pretty brisk walk, but I'm still in that zone 2, which is considered low intensity. Zone 3, 4, which is the moderate intensity, that's what we want to stay away from. And I know this is very different, but I'm just giving you what the research supports. You want to be in zone 1, 2. 1 could be almost doing nothing, but I find just my stretches that I do before my walk, I'm in zone 1, and then the walk, which is pretty brisk, is still only zone 2, which is great for 80% of the time. You can also do an incline walk, you can do a very slow run, you can do gentle stretching. All of that will keep you in the low intensity, which is what you want to do 80% of the time. Now, what's the problem with moderate exercise? The stress that the high intensity exercise, the good stress, it's called adaptive stress, that the high intensity exercise puts you into, which drives the glucose into your muscles and into your mitochondria and does all these beautiful things we've been discussing, that actually doesn't happen in moderate intensity. And in fact, the opposite happens. So moderate intensity exercise is more pro-inflammatory. It's raising your stress hormone cortisol, and you'll actually increase your belly fat amount by doing moderate intensity exercise. And I know that's frustrating, because if you've been doing like a Pilates, or you've been doing certain classes and they're keeping you in that zone 3, 4, and you're working and you're sweating, and your body composition, right? How much muscle, how much fat, it's not changing, and it's frustrating. And I hear it from women all the time. They're like, I work out, I go to the gym, I take 4 classes a week. And so there's the sweet spot, and it's not in moderate intensity. It's in low and high. And so and then, on alternate days, do what you like to do, but we need enough. It's really about enough of the high intensity. If you like to play pickleball or something like that, and that puts you in moderate, not the end of the world, as long as you have that balance at 20% that's solidly in the high intensity. And then other things you like to do, just keep your body moving. 80% of the time you're in the low intensity. That's what we're going for. What we've been missing is the high intensity. Now, if you're an older person, maybe you've been diagnosed with osteoporosis and you're afraid of that. I remember when my mother was diagnosed with osteoporosis, her doctor told her, sit down carefully. That was his recommendation. Now, this was many decades ago, but I wouldn't be surprised if that sort of recommendation is still occurring. There was a study, it was called Lift More, and what they did was they took women that were quite osteoporotic, and meaning low bone density, at risk for fracture, and they did high intensity training and lifting heavy weight and making sure they were getting enough protein. That's a topic for another video. But recomposition occurred as a result of this heavy lifting, where again, they can only do 3 to 5 reps. So it was completely safe for their bone, and as a matter of fact, their bone responded beautifully. What I want for you, what I want for me, my girlfriends, my aunt, my grandma, my mom, look around your life for the women in your life. And what we want is we want to live long. We want to live healthy. We don't want to be frail. We don't want to have that hip fracture. We don't want to get so weak that we're relying on someone else to take care of us. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I'm assuming you're in that category. We want to live long but healthy. And way too many women, we do outlive men by about 6 years, but unfortunately we're not living robustly. We're living in that frail state. and by increasing protein. And if you want to hear more about this, let me know and I'll do another video. By increasing protein, in addition to increasing the exercise, and the protein was 0.8 grams per kilogram of ideal body weight, recomposition happened pretty fast, even in frail women. So the moral of the story is, yes, we're getting older. We do not need to be getting older and getting fat and frail and weak. That is unnecessary. There's so much that can be done. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something. If you did, like, subscribe, write me a comment. I love your comments. I answer all of them, and we'll talk soon.